everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Heavy Metallurgy Wednesday Night Album Club. I am one of your hosts, Alan from Let's Talk Metal, and I am here, as always, with my esteemed co-host, Marty. Marty, how are we doing tonight?
Doing good. You know what? I want to give a quick shout out to my wife, who's probably not watching, but today is our 20-year wedding anniversary. So, cheers to you, Terry, my dear.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary of putting up with this old fat guy for all these years. And yeah, other than that, it's been a pretty good week.
Just going to say, spending your anniversary evening talking metal and nerding out with the two of us, you may not get a 21st anniversary.
No, we're good. we went and got food and all that good stuff earlier. It's all good.
You have anniversaried already. Fair enough then.
Yeah, that's right.
Good deal. And let's see, this evening, Jim cannot be with us. He's got other things that he must attend to, but do not fear. We have one of our favorite guests taking his place for the evening, back from some road tripping and some little bit of being under the weather, but bouncing back strong now is Kellen. Kellen, how are you doing this evening?
I am happy to be here. I'm excited to talk about tonight's album and feeling better, so this is a great way to usher in some good health. So let's do it.
Sounds good. We are very glad to have you back aboard once again for another book club edition. Let's see, Marty, do we have anything we would like to announce before we jump into tonight's album?
Other than I've put links in the description to Kellen's channel, Killing for Company. Please go check him out. He needs more subscribers. He's doing good work over there in his corner of the internet. Also, the same goes to Alan's channel, Let's Talk Metal. Also, link in the description. Have you busted that 1,000 subscriber mark yet, Alan?
No, I'm close, but last time I checked, I was not quite there.
Come on, people. Let's go. Go click on there. We got a t-shirt available. We've got another one in the works coming soon, hopefully. Well, sooner than later.
It's in the early design phase.
It's in the early design phase. And also we have super chats available. If anybody would like to contribute to the Heavy Metallurgy cause, it's not necessary, but if you do, hey, we'll give you the Fonzie thumbs up. And it goes towards our StreamYard fees, our technical stuff. Bought Alan a nice mic. It's going to get me eventually a different computer that'll actually do video better. So yeah, it all goes to a good cause, and we appreciate it. But again, not necessary. We just appreciate you folks for watching and hanging out, liking, subscribing, all that fun stuff.
Yep.
But yeah,
it's always fun to hang out in the chat. I have one thank you to say to you, Marty, for this very cool shirt that I'm wearing.
Aha.
This is
actually it turned out good. Yeah.
It turned out really good.
Yeah.
I mean, some designs look good on shirts, but this one, I just thought the color they picked for the logo, even the color on all the creepy little elf children and stuff, it just really pops nice.
Yeah, indeed.
So very cool. And Marty, if some folks wanted to get this Sabotage shirt for themselves in their own size, where should they go?
You kind of got to be friends with King Fowley on Facebook.
That would be the way to do it.
I don't know if that's public knowledge or not, but it is now. So yeah. So once in a while he does some shirts for friends.
Yeah. Go chat to King on Facebook, ask nicely and politely, and maybe he can point you in the right direction.
He puts stuff up on occasion. It's once in a very great while. 3 or 4 times a year, maybe he'll do 6 different designs at a time. So.
Yep, but yeah, this one turned out quite nice. Marty grabbed me one when he had the chance, and thank you very much. It's a very awesome looking shirt.
You got it.
All right. Anything else, gentlemen, or shall we dive in?
Let's jump in.
What's going on over at the Killing for Company channel before we get started? He just did a very cool stream with Brian Arkham from the Brian Arkham channel, and those two discussed some more obscure death metal from the 90s or the 2000s. I'm sorry, 2000s. And
yeah. So things coming up. I have a couple of videos. It'll probably be a bit more topical. So one, I want to do a new wave of traditional heavy metal sort of response. I saw that Alan, it's kind of been circulating on this channel for a little bit, but Alan did a very specific video on the topic. and I kind of wanted to jump off or sort of use that piggyback off of his idea. So as I'm wearing my Megaton Sword here shirt, a good way to introduce that.
Awesome.
Beyond that, myself and Peter over at, who's not on YouTube, but has a pretty big following on Instagram. He goes by the Metal Vault. He is going to jump on, and it's kind of in honor of Jeff over at Metal Madness 66. He wanted to do a Blut aus Nord deep dive, but his health as of late has not been too great. So I don't know if Jeff will join us, but in a couple of weeks, I'm going to put together a deep dive with them, and we'll be spending the first episode from 95 to 2009 in the Blut aus Nord catalog. So that'll be coming your way.
Cool.
Probably have a COVID Chronicles, things that I've been listening to while I've been moping on the couch.
So, feeling violated.
Yes. Yeah. So I've tons of opportunity over this past week to listen to music, and now just time to sit down and record it. So
I got to tell you, the last couple of weeks, I've been kind of taking time at the end of the day and sitting in my basement in front of my stereo and in a ripped up old piece of shit chair, listening to albums, just sitting and doing nothing, maybe farting around on my phone while the record's playing, but still, actively participating in records. And it's been fun. It makes me want to do it more and more and more. I remember how much I miss it and how much fun it is. Music's always on in the background, but it's kind of wallpaper when you're working, doing something. It's just kind of, stimulation for your brain, but you're not really concentrating on it. But it's cool to be an active participant sitting there looking at the record jackets and stuff. It's been kind of a nice reconnection. I kind of want to get back into doing that more often, other than, in the car and at work. But anyway, that's way off topic. We should probably get on topic.
Well, this
what are we
is
talking
a good
about?
Opportunity to focus and think about a record and
yes,
so
absolutely.
Yep. But yeah, and that sounds really cool, Kellen. I look forward to the Blut aus Nord deep dive, because that's a band I've only started listening to recently with their last couple of albums and really like, but I know they've got a weird and long catalog, so I really don't know which way to jump next. So yeah, this is going to be a really cool one to check out. I look forward to it.
Yeah.
And let's see, speaking of Jeff, Jeff is kind of the reason that we're talking about tonight's album, which is this one by a band called Vicious Rumors, and the album is entitled Digital Dictator. So Vicious Rumors were out of Santa Rosa, California, north of San Francisco, according to Wikipedia and Kellen. And they made a couple albums in the 80s, and they have come back. They've actually had an album out just in 2020. It was one of these bands that I'd always heard the name of, but never really got around to checking out. And a while back, Jeff over at Metal Madness had mentioned them, once upon a time as like, hey, you guys, if you don't know this band, you should check them out. And so I was like, okay, store that nugget of information in the back of my head for future reference. And then a few weeks ago, I was at a used bookstore, and this was sitting in their pile of used CDs. As I was like, guess that's the same band. So, check on the phone. So I was like, yeah, actually, that is the same band and an older album. So Jeff has pretty good taste in heavy music. I trust his recommendations most of the time. So I picked it up and so I was like, yeah, okay, let's see what this is like. And since it was my turn to pick something for the album club, it's like, well, let's just make everybody listen to it as well, and we'll see what it's like. So with that quick introduction out of the way, we'll go through some of the basics about the album and, talk a little bit more too about maybe its, place in 80s heavy metal and what was going on with, metal in the US and also, specifically metal in California at the time. For this particular album, let's start with first impressions. Kellen, what's your first impression of Vicious Rumors album? Oh, and I should mention, if I didn't, this is their second album and did have a revised lineup from the first album. So they had some new members aboard.
Came out in 1988.
There we go. Yes.
First impression, I liked it a lot. It's the closest thing in my collection to Vicious Rumors was probably Armored Saint. It just sounded, it had a little
That
bit.
would say a lot in my opinion on it. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. we'll get there, Marty. But yeah, that was probably the closest thing in my collection. But it is also, we kind of feel like we've been circling this topic surrounding American traditional heavy metal and its sort of intersection with power metal. I feel like that's a consistent thread the past few times I've tuned into heavy metallurgy. And I think Jim, one time made a good comment where it's like a lot of the records that are difficult to decipher or easily categorize, often for him, you know, are some of the bands or projects or albums that he continually pulls off the shelf. And I was thinking about that because this band sort of straddles a couple of different things, which is at times they sound like the rhythm section sounded like a thrash band to me a little bit, in the sense that it was heavier, but there was also this kind of, I don't know, LA sort of on the strip sort of,
dude. 100%.
Like it walks an interesting line. And sure, you hear people talk about this band as being difficult to categorize. And to Alan's point, the time period in which this album comes out in '88 is also important for discussion. Because where this sound was in America in 1988 is probably more complicated in terms of finding an audience for, by comparison to somewhere early in the 80s. So while I really liked it, I have to say, you know, in my collection, there's a whole lot of blast beats and people screaming at me. To put on a record like this is a little bit of, you know, breath of fresh air. So it was fun to be able to jump into something like this and get a different sort of sound to my sort of daily listening habits.
Okay.
See, Marty, what were your first impressions of Vicious Rumors?
You know, I liked it, but I kind of wanted to like it more than I did. And Kellen, you're mentioning Armored Saint, it's kind of perfect because it's kind of the same wheelhouse for me as Armored Saint, a band that I want to like. I hear a lot of people say how much they like and love them, and I just am not there. And you know, Vicious Rumors is new to me as of last year. I picked these two tapes up. These are the two that came out immediately after Digital Dictator. We've got 1990s self-titled and 1991's Welcome to the Ball. And, you know, I went into these thinking it was going to be late era thrash. And when it wasn't, I was kind of taken aback by it. And, I mean, the look, I mean, it's on Atlantic. So, I mean, this band got up and did something. They got signed.
Yep.
I mean, it's on Atlantic. The look and feel of these things, the logo, you know, the song titles, this looks like late era thrash to me. And it's not. I would say these two albums are way heavier, a little bit more heavier. I shouldn't say way heavier, a little bit more heavier than Digital Dictator. And what I was very surprised on Digital Dictator is, yeah, I really did overall enjoy it. But the glamisms, they're there. They're there. And it's kind of hard to shake, and it's a little cheesy, and they sound a bit confused to me, and I can't take anything away from them because they're a good band, technically proficient, great guitar players, great singer. Not a lot of variety, not a lot of like tempo variety. A lot of it's kind of straight ahead plotting, not even like plotting double bass, just kind of there's a sleazy beat that comes in once in a while. You know, Kellen kind of lined it up as the LA feel, and it's kind of true. It's kind of true. It's there. I just kind of didn't know how to feel about it. My head wanted it to be a certain way, and the way the album starts out, it's kind of, you know, showing their teeth a little bit. But as it goes, it gets a little more sleazy. But what did you think, Alan?
See, kind of the same, in the same zip code as you two. You know, on first impression, things like this is pretty good for what it is, but it is a little hard to nail down what it is and what it's trying to be. Yeah, there definitely is a component of the, you know, traditional 80s, you know, US metal sound, but it does lean, you know, not full out glammy, but it's got a little bit of that commercial lean. You know, some of those bands that were hoping they could toe the line between being heavy, but maybe still get, some FM radio hits, maybe still have the MTV video with all the hot chicks dancing around some kind of sports car while they pretended to play in the background. They're very close in that wheelhouse. But there is a dose of traditional metal in there too. They kind of, when they're on, they sound, they're not that far from stuff like this. There's a component of the metal churches, the liege lord in the more intense moments. A fellow shrapnel band, Wild Dogs, kind of, bite to it. Yes, I set that up. Dog bite. Yes. But yeah, there is that, slickness, and some of the songs, as you mentioned, Marty, after you get past, the first couple of songs, you hit a patch there where they are, it's not Sunset Strip metal, but
no,
it's maybe like 2 blocks over from the Strip.
Yeah.
It's in that neighborhood. And that was something, Jeff had warned me about when he recommended Vicious Rumors. He's like, one thing, just to be aware of, especially lyrically, he's like, they can be kind of, cheesy, in that, commercial sense. He's like, the lyrics weren't always their strong suit. And it does show there. I've not heard the first album, so I don't have anything to compare it to. Changing out a guitarist and a vocalist is a pretty big deal, but they seem to get pretty good folks aboard. You mentioned, they got a very good vocalist in Carl Albert on this one. Vinnie Moore was on only the first album, got replaced by Mark McGee, who had also been in some bands before. So they had experienced guys coming in that did pretty well. But yeah, like so many bands from, the 80s US scene, it's like they want one foot in the real metal style, but they also want one foot just outside of it enough to try to, land that big deal and, get that, rock stardom going on. And they did land the big deal. As you said, they did move on to Atlantic. So they did something right in that sense. So yeah, it's a hard one to nail down. So, Kellen, we'll kind of start local and maybe zoom up to it. Kellen had pointed out that, California's metal scene is in the 80s kind of a divided one. That, you've got an LA scene in the South that has a different vibe to it from the Bay Area scene a bit further north. And here you've got this band a little bit further north from the Bay Area, but their sound maybe fits in more with the southern part of the state. So how do you think that, played out, or how does that affect what they did, Kellen?
I mean, this is a very open question for me, right? Because I'm just speculating.
Sure,
of course. I have no idea in terms of my experience with metal culture, comes much after this time period. So I just, in terms of going through and trying to learn as much as I possibly could about thrash and how it presented itself in opposition to so much of the glam scene that was popular at the time. Like, I don't know for both of you, if you remember it being an incredibly divided camp, as much as that has been sort of, I don't know what to say, dramatized, but it definitely seemed like the thrash scene saw themselves as antithetical to what was happening in LA, sonically, visually. And I couldn't help but kind of get the idea that this band was toying in both scenes. So I didn't think that would really work in their favor. They didn't really understand how to navigate the two of them, or even if metal fans wanted to. By 88, if they had kind of picked their side. I mean, we're really, at this point, thrash is, if not at its peak, sort of ending, in terms of where its climax is, and death metal's on its way in. So for something like this, to ask, a fan to hold on to the glam and thrash, or trying to pull how much of an American power metal fan base was out there, I think to your point about it being confused, I think it's kind of in that camp. And I just was kind of interested to pick your brain as to, if you would have heard this in 1988, what would your thoughts have been? Would you have been eager to hear it, or would you have been disappointed, like you wanted something a bit more strong in an individual category?
Well, what do you think, Marty? How would you have reacted to this in '88? A
Well,
young Marty, a young worm, just out for a morning stroll.
At this point, I was pretty getting into the whole thrash thing, and this band, they don't suck. They don't. They're really good. They have an exceptional vocalist, Carl Albert, who has passed away in 1995. Rest in peace. I just wanted, even now listening to it, I want it to go harder. I want it to be a little faster. And, for a band like this to be just outside the Bay Area, they're gigging the Bay Area. They are. They're going down there. They're part of it. They're part of the Bay Area. They're close enough to be considered the Bay. In fact, Wikipedia calls them a Bay Area band. So, they're getting in mixed. This came out in 85. This came out in 88. The first album came out in 85. The band formed in 79, which to me is very telling of why they kind of are the way they are. Because 79, there wasn't thrash. There just wasn't. And it was more of a hard rock thing that was coming out of, and they're probably influenced by, and it's very evident that it's, though it doesn't hit you over the head with a glam feel, there's an element to it that you can tell is influenced by older hard rock. And which, as that era moved on, obviously, if a band decided to stick to more of the hard rock route, they ended up being more glam. And Vicious Rumors aren't that. They flirt with it. And, you have a very colorful shredder that fits very well within that category stylistically and with his technical prowess. But the band has got, they've got, like I said, they show their teeth on occasion, which is cool. I just wish they did it more. Back then I would have bought this tape and I probably would have liked it. I would have listened to it a lot more. I've only listened to this tape 3 times. So I haven't really, this is one that would have to be a grower for me. It kind of loses its steam a little bit, and it kind of becomes the middle section of it becomes a slog. And there's a few things on here that actually made me laugh out loud listening to it. But anyway,
Yep.
It I don't know. I don't know how much. Obviously, they did, like you said, they did something right, because the next albums after are on Atlantic. Atlantic is signing up thrash at that point. Maybe they look like a thrash band, they signed them. And like I said, these 2 albums are a little bit heavier. There's a little less. I didn't really pick up any glamisms on either of these. They're still not thrash. They're still like in that US heavy / power metal vibe. It's good. I enjoyed both of these tapes, but not a lot of return potential. There's not a lot of return for me on it.
Okay.
But what do you think, Alan?
Yeah, it's a pattern that a lot of bands did around that time. There were a lot of bands that, metal was an up and coming popular thing in the early and mid 80s. A lot of it, bands like, you had British bands, Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, becoming, huge, stadium rock star kind of bands, tour the United States, make a huge impression. All these bands kind of pop up, following suit with that. But then you also have metal that's a little more, accessible, commercial friendly, whatever you want to call it. Things that are getting, top 40 kind of hits and more MTV play and things like that. And there were a ton of bands that seemed to have this mentality that they were going to play both ends, that they were going to do some material that was, that, Priest, Maiden, heavier accept kind of end of the spectrum, so that if people liked that, they could swerve that way. But they were also going to do some material that was a lot more accessible, stuff that, had more a commercial appeal, so that if folks latched onto that material, the band could pretty easily bend that way. It's a strategy you see mentioned over and over again when you read liner notes on anthologies and stuff like that. The bands are like, yeah, we have some heavy numbers, but we wanted to have some party numbers, too, because you never knew, which side of the single, a label might latch onto and say, hey, this is the sound we're looking for. So they tried to do both sounds. And I'm kind of at a loss trying to think of any band that worked out well for. And it kind of like Kellen said, a lot of the more true heavy metal fans weren't interested in these bands that were playing it a little too safe. And most of the time, bigger labels and primetime video slots, they weren't being given to bands that were leaning a little too heavy. And so it's almost like they ended up shooting themselves in both feet at the same time by refusing to pick a lane and dedicate themselves to it. I'm sure there's exceptions I'm not thinking of off the top of my head where maybe it worked out for the band, or maybe in some cases a band started out straddling the line and then switched into just one lane or the other and made a go of it. And again, we should emphasize it obviously didn't go that badly for Vicious Rumors. They did get signed to a major label. They did get to make more albums with more visibility to them. But at the same time, they have not become any kind of household name. They're not a band you're going to hear played on Hair Nation, and they're not going to get played on Ozzy's Boneyard either. You're not going to hear much of anybody play them at this point. They never really did establish an audience. To Kellen's point, was there an audience for this? I think there was, but it was just too narrow of a niche. There's just there's only so many bands. There's also only room for so many bands in any given niche. And when you think that, Armored Saint, already had themselves pretty firmly entrenched in this kind of style. We haven't mentioned it yet, but you kind of have Wasp straddles that line a little bit, and obviously was already more of a name thing. You can only cram so many bands into any particular style and have them be really successful. And there's only so much of a market for bands that are trying to cram in between what's popular and what's more underground. Back to the question of what would I have thought of this in 88? I think I would have been okay with this in 88. If I'd heard this, I'd have probably been like, yeah, okay, that's not bad.
It's not bad. No.
Yeah, I didn't start out, going straight into the heaviest end of the spectrum, in 88. With 88, I was still listening to I was listening to early. That's about the time I'm getting into heavy music anyway. And so I'm listening to more stuff that has MTV rotation while also starting to get a few thrash albums and some heavier stuff too. So I don't think it would have bothered me in 88. It doesn't bother me now. But I can just see where the appeal, they were trying to make themselves appeal to both audiences. And in doing so, I think they managed to make themselves appeal to neither.
The funny thing is, and I think we should, reiterate this point, that whatever this band has done, it's working for somebody. I mean, they just put out in 2020 Celebration Decay, their 13th full-length album on SPV. I mean, they're still on a good record label. They're still productive. As all these years from 1979 to 2022, they're still a thing, and people are still, vibing on this stuff. And again, I've now heard 3 Vicious Rumors albums. So, I mean, obviously I have some catching up. I don't know if they got heavier. I don't know if they stayed straddling the line. I have no idea, but whatever they're doing, my opinion doesn't much matter because it's been a success. Granted, they're not rock stars, they're not a household name, but they apparently have a crowd and they've got the backing of a bigger label that wants to continue to support them. So there's that.
Yeah. It's not like this band, did one album and disappeared and never, had a career of it. But it's just they never really broke through into that next echelon either.
Yeah,
which is what all these bands that pulled this half and half thing. It seems like that's really what they wanted to do, is figure out which one can we break through in, and then we'll go in that direction. And they just end up hitting a glass ceiling in both directions.
Yeah.
I just out of curiosity, like I'm not a big glam, connoisseur, so
me either. A few.
I'm just curious, like if you back then, would it have seemed like a better idea to sort of latch yourself onto that wagon? Did it seem even at that point in 88 like there was going to be more of a lifespan to that?
I think it would have been a much more short-lived flash in the pan. I mean, how many bands came out of the glam era that didn't get all the MTV push and didn't get and yes, Poison, Def Leppard, and Motley Crue are touring the States right now, but those are kind of the three big ones from that era. Where while Rad is playing, a dugout version of Rad is touring the fairground circuit. So I mean, I don't know. I think they did the right thing because they're still productive and they're in, like, SPV is a solid label in Europe. It just is. They put out a very diverse range of metal, from thrash and death and whatever to stuff like Vicious Rumors and beyond. So I don't know. What do you think about that, Alan?
Yeah, I think we want to be careful too, as Moonsorrow mentioned a minute ago. Glam's not quite the right tag to put on this. This never really feels like it's hairspray and lipstick, and this is not Poison or any of those kind of bands. It's just that it's got a little bit more of that
sleaze.
A little bit. It's not even a heavy dose. But it's enough to be noticeable. It's a little bit slicker sounding.
Okay, 1 second before we move on from that point. I want to quote one little chunk of lyrics here.
Okay, I have lyrics to go through.
I bet we are. There are some good ones.
Just because my leather is black, skin tight, when we hit the stage, we rock all night.
Mm-hmm.
I heard that in the car and I fucking started laughing out loud. This is on the album, the close to the end of the album, RLH, which means rock like hell.
Yep.
Not a favorite song on the album, but that's the cheese element is kind of there, Yeah.
Kellen, what's one of your let's all do at least one vocal shout out here. What's one of your favorites that you found within the songs?
Ice cold candy with a strawberry twist. You can eat it on the run, or you can rub it on a stick tonight.
So yeah,
that's.
I mean,
yeah, like that. It's there. My favorite, and this one, I literally stopped the song and went back and played it again to make sure I heard it correctly. But in "Lady Took a Chance," there's two quick lines: "Shark skin jacket, dorsal fin attack." I'm just like, what the hell is going on with this? I'm pretty sure I will never hear, sometimes, heavy metal bands can be a little redundant in their lyrics. There's a lot of, glory and thunder and school rhymes with cool and fool and nothing else in the English language. I'm pretty sure we will never again hear a band utter the line dorsal fin attack.
Mel, is it rough or is it sexy?
And I think to your point, the album starts and you have a certain impression this could be going somewhere.
Yeah.
And then I heard "Lady Took a Chance." I just felt like someone rolled in with all the cocaine and strippers, and I was like, "Oh, the party has completely changed."
Dr. Roxo.
Yes, Dr. Roxo.
Yep. It starts getting, and I guess that's a good point. Yeah, it's kind of how the album. So, how does the album kind of play out for you, Kellen? Marty's mentioned it has a certain kind of peaks and valleys. What's your impression of the album from start to finish, where it goes up or down or stays kind of flat?
Well, I mean, they kind of have three themes for me. So we've already touched on the amazing lyrical stripper sleaze factor, right? Like, so they've got that, which is clearly the first thing that I pull out is like, okay, that is meant for a lot of the Los Angeles crowd. But looking at the album artwork, I thought this was going to be a little bit of a different, I kind of thought it would be a little bit more thrash in theme or American power metal in theme. And it definitely is. Like, Digital Dictator, the title track, and Minute to Kill. I mean, those are upper, like, you can feel like.
Those are the ones I picked too as killer. Yeah.
I mean, you can hear they were fans of Priest, right? Like, it's got some new wave of British heavy metal sort of gallop to them. Those songs, it starts off great. And then you have, your title track, which is sort of this thematically was working for me, right? Like, okay, I fit the album, and they return to that theme later on the second half of the record. But, and the other part of it is just like heavy metal, whatever, family. Like, we love being metal people, there's that side of it, which is great. So when they were sticking to the latter two themes, I was game. Like I got it. And because sonically, why I probably have more latitude here is there's not a lot of this in my collection. And because I don't have any glam, something like Armored Saint or Vicious Rumors is a nice little introduction for me. It's easily digestible. It's a lot of fun to listen to for someone it gives me an option. So when you had those couple of sort of themes and songs, later on in the album, we'll go through the track list, but as long as they were playing that role where I could hear like American power metal or the new wave of British heavy metal influence, I was good. It's when they veered off of that to where I kind of felt like this is, I can check out here. This is not, something that I really want to spend my time listening to.
Yeah.
There are formal aspects of the band in terms of the songwriting, like the amount of vocalists, like backing vocals they use.
All of them are listed as backing vocals.
Yeah, like it's a big group, and they all have, are decent singers. I never felt like. I thought that was a really. We'll get into this probably later on, but the balance between you have this dynamic centerpiece in terms of a vocalist. Like Carl's work he's a great lead vocalist. I mean, what he's singing about, we may have differing opinions on, but in terms of a personality, like he is captivating in the course of this record. And I thought the backing vocals actually worked well. They made like through a chorus, they had dynamic sort of give and pull with that. I thought it was really interesting to listen to, as opposed to like very predictable thrash sort of backing vocals and chanting.
Group yell type shit. Yeah.
Like I'm kind of bored with that. So this was an interesting sort of addition to the mix. But so I would say like 2/3 of the album spoke to me and kind of went with my flow. But the rest of it, I kind of had low points.
Okay,
sure.
Marty, sounds like yours is kind of the same, but anything else you'd like to point out about kind of the flow or of the album?
No, I feel the strong points of the album are definitely the guitar playing and the vocals. And it's kind of funny. The Jeff Thorpe is the guy he's the mastermind and the band leader of this band, I guess.
Right.
And he is listed as second lead vocalist and backing, which I found kind of funny because I've only listened to the album 3 times, so I don't remember hearing much differentiation between the singers, the lead and the second lead vocalists. Obviously, everybody in the band sings backups, the backup vocals, the gang yells and shit. But the vocals, the guitar work, and some of the songwriting is quite good, but the guitar work is exceptional. I like the feel. It's got kind of a dated feel to it, which it appeals to me because I'm from that era. So, I mean, I recognize it and pick up on it. And it feels kind of like putting on a pair of Converse that are all fucked up. That's when they start to you're wearing them as slippers in the house and driving to the store in them because they just fit right and they sound, but you're going to be throwing them away soon. Is the problem. And that's kind of the way this Vicious Rumors goes for me. As the album went on, I mean, we're just gonna kind of mumble jumble this up a little bit, I guess. But Digital Dictator, Minute to Kill were indeed for me. I'm like, this sounds killer. This is gonna be a ripping ass awesome album. As the album progressed, by the 3rd, 4th, 5th song, I'm just kind of like, man, I don't hate it. I don't. It's pretty damn good, but I kind of want it to be over. It starts to be, like I said, it starts to become a slog. I don't know what it is. And then I'm laughing at RLH that skin tight leather thing, we rock all night thing. I just fucking laughed out loud. I'm just like, Parker's like, my son's like, what's so funny, Dad? I'm like, no, this dumb lyric, son. He's like, oh, okay. That was it. But yeah, what world do you want to be in? It just feels like maybe it's a transitional album because these didn't strike me that way. They just didn't strike me that way. It just seemed like maybe something they were fucking with. They didn't fit in the thrash scene of the Bay Area at all. They don't. I mean, they could play with those bands, but they would kind of probably be crushed by those bands. in intensity, probably not in guitar prowess, because like I said, this Thorpe guy, he can shred. I mean, this was on Shrapnel, wasn't it? Or was it on Road?
And Varney really didn't pick up bands if they couldn't do the guitar heroics. That was his thing.
Yeah. Well, it must have got reissued on Roadrunner because it says
it probably got licensed, I guess.
Yeah.
I didn't dig into it, but yeah, Roadrunner must have licensed this for Europe.
Right on. Yeah, that's probably what it was. But yeah, I mean, this album is really it's solid, and if you're into this style, you're gonna like it. But I just don't like it enough to want to listen to it again. I wish the first song is Replicant, which is instrumental, short intro, then Digital Dictator, Minute to Kill. Those are the ones where there's some bang for the buck. There's a little bit of power in there, a little bit of there's an intensity in those chord progressions and the guitar work that really kind of indicate of what they can do. And I wish they continued it through the whole thing. Yeah, No False Metal's giving it an 8 out of 10. I would give it a 6.5 out of 10, to be honest. What do you think, Alan?
I think it's kind of a U-shaped curve for what the album does. As you guys said, it starts off very well. Digital Dictator's a strong track. Minute to Kill, picks up the pace. It's more intense. It really struck me as that Judas Priest influence that Kellen mentioned shines through there.
Yeah.
Towns on Fire isn't bad, but it feels a little bit more like an early 80s Accept number where it's still kind of heavy, but the weird cheesy lyrics are starting to seep in at that point.
The background vocals on there, just saying the song title is kind of becomes a thing as it goes.
Yeah. And then, Lady Took a Chance. I think we can all agree that we've been attacked by the dorsal fin and not sure what to do at that point. There are some good tracks in the back half of this, and they make it a little lost, amidst some of the cheese at that point. But The Crest is not a bad track. It's got a little bit of a grindier vibe, a little touch of epic to it. Condemned, Moon Sorrow mentioned before. I thought that was a pretty decent track. And I really like the closer, Out of the Shadows. It's a little faster, more intense, has a little bit more of an anthemic feel to it. So again, like Kellen said too, they've got these different lyrical themes when they're sticking to the more serious stuff. The state of technology being used for control and fighting the system. Those kind of tracks work really well. When they're doing some of the Accept heavy metal balls to the wall stuff like Towns on Fire, okay, it still works all right. But when they start getting a little too much into the party mode metal, it does lose some stuff. But I think there are some good tracks towards the end of the album where it kind of pulls itself back up out of that nosedive a little bit. And to be fair, even the songs that lyrically are a bit of a quagmire, musically, they're still performed well. There is talent in this band, so it's not like the songs flat out suck. It's just that if you stop and listen to what they're singing about, that's when you start to be like, oh geez, that's kind of rough. And again, that was something that Jeff had told me about this band, that that was their Achilles heel, was that they did have a penchant for those bad cheesy lyrics. But I think it's kind of a U-shaped album. And if we're thinking about overall album kind of rating, for me, this is probably like in that 7 range. It's not strong enough to get up there in the 8-9 kind of range, but it's good enough to get out of that middle of the pack average range too.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Well, we've covered a lot of the basics. Kellen, I think, was there something you touched on earlier that you wanted to circle back to? I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank here.
No, I think, you kind of brought up my question. I think you had mentioned, I don't know if you wanted to do a zoom out part of this at all, talking about, I think there were 2 sort of questions you wanted to go over. So I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, but
I think we kind of did in terms of its place in, the broader, heavy metal scene at the time, because you're right. Thrash and Death, have already pulled, the heavy audience one way. Brett Michaels has already pulled the other half of the audience a very different way towards the Avon counter at the local shopping mall. So these bands in between the late 80s is a tough time to really make it big.
I bet you they felt really I mean, what kind of tours are they going to go on here? It's, what kind of package they can be put on? I don't know. It just seemed like it would have been really hard to be what they were during this era, but again, it worked out for them. I mean, they got signed with Atlantic, but I mean, Atlantic also signed Malaya Rage, which wasn't necessarily a thrash band, wasn't necessarily a straight up heavy metal band. They were kind of a weird conglomeration of stuff. And, maybe that's whoever was on the A&R department of Atlantic liked that style. I mean, obviously they signed multiple bands that sounded like that. And, and again, Malaya Rage is another band I had never heard of until the show, Jim picking it. I always saw it in the Camelot Records rack and tape. And I'm always like, man, that's a stupid cover. And there's none of these covers are like this ball into the building, the swastika ball or whatever the hell that thing is into the building. It's like, just looks like old tired thrash,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know.
And that, that is something bands were dealing with at this point. In '85, with the first album, this band, might have been considered, sort of on top of things with what was going on in the metal scene. But by this album in '88, it would have felt dated to metalheads that had been following things throughout the '80s. This was a style that, for the first half of the decade would work, and in the second half of the decade would have a harder time working. It's not that there was no audience for it, just that metal was going into different directions by that point, and the bands in the middle were not the ones rocketing to the top necessarily.
You're right, Ken. I mean, there's a lot of different little things that creep up here and there. They're influenced by a lot of stuff. Like I said, they're a band from 1979, so they've got a rock, and there's an obvious metal love here, but I mean, they come from a place of rock, hard rock, so a little bit of everything seeps into their mix.
Yeah, these guys, like Carl Albert had, I was talking or chatting with someone in the comments earlier, Carl had sung with Hawaii, on some of their earlier stuff, Marty Friedman's old band. So, it's not like, they were, just, a group of, teenagers that had never done anything. These guys, had made some rounds and done other quote unquote, serious metal projects. It's not like they were completely gunning for, the LA Guns or style or something like that either.
And I gotta say too, this whole shrapnel vibe of artists, there's definitely a style there, and it's a style that I missed out on. I'd always see the Chastain tapes sitting there. Tony McAlpine came to Traverse City and did a guitar clinic. Me and a friend went to that and sat through about 20 minutes of it, and like, this just isn't for us, and we left. But I've just never really fully connected with that whole vibe. I'm kind of late to hearing some Chastain stuff. Some of it's cool, but I don't love it. It's just a weird, it's very focused on solos and, a style of metal that does walk into different genres here and there on occasion. Whether it's a little bit glammy, whether it's just a little bit heavy metal. I mean, it never really, I've heard some stuff and nothing really, I don't know if I own any. The only Chastain I own is the thing he did with Mark Shelton.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah. I've got some of his early stuff. I don't have a ton of his CJSS or stuff. I've heard it from time to time. It's never bad. It's just never landed in my collection for whatever reason. But Frosty, there is something funny. Yes, there's that goofy little backwards message at the end, and it is something that's very kind of silly throwaway, but I'm drawing a blank on what it is now. I'll check and see if I can find it real quick, because I didn't mean to look that back up. Do you know what it was, Kellen?
I think it was a reference towards the Judas Priest. They believe that they were promoting self-harm or suicide. I believe that's what it's referenced towards.
Here it is right here. When the track is reversed, one can hear the following message. Be nice to your mom and dad. Don't abuse. Don't blow your brains out on drugs. Rock your brains out. By the way, you're ruining your needle.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So kind of the yes, the backwards message that Tipper Gore can give a thumbs up to. No sticker needed on this album, other than hey kids, check out this hip new happening band.
Right.
Right, because I think wasn't Judas Priesting sort of thought of it including subliminal messages?
Yeah, they.
Yeah.
I don't know if they had hit at this point or not. I always get the timing of that wrong. I think that happened to Priest a little bit. It's somewhere in that 88 to 90, 91 range. It was happening either right before Painkiller or right after Painkiller came out. So the accusations were probably flying around by this time. I know around this time, I remember kids in like middle school, and that would have been 88 timeframe. Some of them were very much afraid, if you had a tape. I remember somebody had, I guess it was probably like an Ozzy Osbourne tape. And I remember other kids being like, don't play that around me, man. There's like hidden messages in it that play it backwards that like make you kill yourself.
Huh.
And we're all just looking at it just like, what'd you say? or really? Where'd you get that? But so yeah, I don't know if Priest specifically had been charged with anything by that point, but they were. And it was definitely the kind of thing that was on people's mind by that point in the late 80s.
That backmasking stuff might have happened a little bit here and there purposefully, but a lot of it was just, weird coincidence here and there, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. The Priest one in particular, it's a combination of like, Halford inhaling and just, one little particular guitar tone kind of makes it start to sound like, there's a word or two being said. Whereas you see the kind of like junk, and it comes out as, parents and stuff were claiming that it's supposed to sound like, do it or something in reference to killing yourself. So, and, they'd tried to bring in all these audio experts to prove it, and actually ended up disproving it rather than.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's no way that's going to pass in court. No way.
Yeah. But I mean, it did go to court. It was a big thing. And, did put a lot of stress on those bands being, drugged through the legal system and having to deal with
that. It
that.
had to be awful.
Yeah. Yeah. It delayed, production on next, albums had to be put on the shelf, and tours had to be put on the shelf, to deal with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They did have to deal with it. Yeah, I guess based on this message, Vicious Rumors probably didn't have it to make many court appearances.
No, probably not. Well, cool.
Right.
It was a cool pick, Alan. I appreciate it, and it was cool to check that out. Thanks for mentioning it. It was a nice little trip away from what we normally cover, for sure.
Yeah. Final thoughts, I guess, then, Kellen?
Well, I am probably more forgiving of this record than the two of you. I really enjoyed listening to this. As cringeworthy as parts of it, definitely were. It was a lot of fun to listen to. And I think, to your point, it is kind of that mid-pace. It doesn't really get anywhere close to like the speed or aggression that Thrash had, but it just was a lot of fun to listen to, and it provided a little bit of a break in my regular listening habits. So I'm going to return to it. And it does make me curious a little bit to look into this part of the California metal scene, the time period. Because as much as I kind of was hesitant to embrace this altogether, like I really enjoyed this listen. I remember when Marty was like, this is what we're listening to, I made it like 5 minutes in, and I texted him back and was like, yeah, sign me up. I'm all good for this one. So
Awesome.
Yeah, I actually liked it. And there's a part of the metal scene that I can, if I can listen to 5 billion records about all sorts of grotesque violence, then I can, listen to one record about some cringeworthy party behavior. So outside of that, like formally, guitar playing, tremendous. Singing, amazing. So I like this one a lot.
Very cool. Very cool. So Marty, final thoughts?
I like it too. I've been kind of hard on it. It's easy to go hard on something that, gives you a layup. Essentially, it's easy to make the shot, but it's okay. It's a good album. Like I said, it starts out strong. It kind of peters out for me. It's not a style I listen to often. I guess I'm more into the more traditional power metal style. It's good. I like it. If I see it in a used bin, I'll probably pick it up. I don't think I'll go to it much though. It'll be kind of just a shelf filler. But that's not a bad thing, I guess. And I just, applaud these guys for all the years they've put into this and are still going, and they're productive, and people like them. So that's cool. But yeah, for me, it was a harder sell. Granted, I've kind of circled back around to finally, after years, I'm fully back into the black metal thing. So I've been listening to a ton of shitty black metal. So hearing this, I wasn't in the mood for it. I got in the mood for it. I ended up, it was fun to listen to, but I wasn't fully there. So, my mood could partially play into my initial thoughts of it. But yeah, it's okay. It's a good record. I don't love it. I like the other two Vicious Rumors I have a little bit more.
Okay. I think I'm in between I've landed in between the two of you. I may not be quite as high on it as Kellen is, but the musicianship is very good.
Oh, it's great.
And I think they have more hits than misses on the album. Yeah, again, I think some of those later tracks really do redeem some of the middle tracks, that missed the mark a bit. That said, I don't know if it's one I will go back to a ton. Time will tell on that. It may just be one of those things that I'm always like, yeah, it's a thumbs up kind of album, but it may not be things I said earlier, I was going to give it like a 7 out of 10. And I've noticed, that very much is the mark for me for albums that I like, but I'm not prone to playing or revisiting all that frequently. When you start getting above 7, that's the stuff that I seem to circle back to more. Below 7, yeah, once in a while for reasons. But yes, 7's that kind of, it's kind of the B or B minus. It's good, but it's not good enough to grab my attention necessarily on a really regular basis. But it is a good album, and like you said, Marty, it may sound like I'm being more harsh on it than I am. At the end of the day, I do give it a thumbs up, and I think it's a solid listen.
You have to keep in mind, I mean, this is 1988. Same year Keepers 1 came out. And there's a lot of albums that are coming out around this time in metal, in traditional metal, in thrash metal, that are a lot better than this record. I mean, it's just the way it is. I mean, these guys are kind of doing a really great thing. They're musically proficient, kind of lost on this one a little bit. I don't know. Anyway, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for everybody for hanging out on this one.
Yeah, and for next week, what do you guys want to do? You want to go a little more death metal, or you want to go a little more black metal? I'll let you choose the path, and I've got 2 to choose from. Both of these were released last year. So they're recent albums.
Kellen, I'll let you flip the coin.
Black metal.
Black metal? Okay. Not that this is straight up black metal by any means, but it's certainly more so than the one. Well, I guess we're going to go with Germany's Thalkandra on the their latest album, A Dying Wish. Obviously, these guys, their 4th album. These guys came out as an unashamed Dissection tribute band, and they've done Dissection better than Dissection did at the end of their career, and put out some really good albums. So this is it. Thalkandra, A Dying Wish. I've only listened to this twice, and it was some time ago, so I'm interested to get back into it.
I've seen that a bunch in the VC, but I have yet to listen to it. So,
have you heard any of their stuff?
I have not.
This is their 4th. Dude, they're all really good. I mean, it's solid Dissection worship. That's all I'll say.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all. It's what it is. That could be the whole review. Solid Dissection worship. But yeah, there we go. That's it. The other one would have been the Hath All That Was Promised. This is also a crusher.
Maybe we'll circle back to that in a few weeks.
Maybe we will, for sure.
All right. Let's see. Show notes. Now, Friday night is a little up in the air right now. We may be trying something a tad different. Trying to get some pieces lined up for that. So, folks, we'll just have to wait and see what comes down the pipe on Friday. It's too early to tease anything solid at this point, but we will try to get something up and running. We're in negotiations with a couple of folks. I'm just looking.
And I probably won't be here. So
yes, it may just be me steering the ship with some other esteemed guests while Marty goes out and supports the local metal community in his area.
Yep. Needs to be done. We're small and not many of us here, so got to be done.
Indeed. But yes, if we can get some things lined up for Friday, we will see folks then. And next week, we'll be talking Thulkandra with Kellen, and hopefully Jim can join us for that one as well.
Yep. And Kellen, thank you again for joining us. Everybody, go check out Killing for Company on YouTube. The link is in the description. Check out Let's Talk Metal. Link in the description. Let's get Alan over 1,000 subscribers. Finally, come on. We're teasing him. We got to get him there so we can start making those little shorts posts and stuff.
I want that free pony. I do get a pony for 1,000 subscribers, right?
No. If it pony, you mean burrito, then yeah. Well, we can get you a burrito.
Where's my pony? Where's my pony? Where's my pony?
We'll get you a dolphin.
That is not a pony.
You can still ride it.
Hey, man. After this, no dorsal fin attacks. No, sir. I'm going to ride a pony across the plains, like the mighty cowboy. No dorsal fin attacks.
Well, awesome, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us, Kellen. Thank you again, Alan. Always, you rule, sir. And Alan, we'll see you Friday. I'll be watching.
I will hopefully see you Friday, and Marty will join us. Get back into the rotation as soon as his metal festivities are all done and done.
Yes. And Kellen will be back with us next week for sure. So cheers to all that. And we will see you all next time. Take care.
Chickens rule, dolphins drool. Think about it.